Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Neumaier, with film critic with New York's WOR Radio. I just want to give these folks a terrific round of applause again because that film is so terrific. Peter Sarsgaard, Jessica Chastain, director Michel Franco. The film is Memory. Congratulations on the film, all of you. It's so terrific and it's so thought-provoking in so many ways. Michel, let's talk about the origins of it. How did the story come to you? What did you want to tell, and what emotions did you want to get onto the page?
Well, I like exploring the minds and emotions of broken people. I always get the laughs when I'm not going for them. And the opposite, of course, that's what's sad. You know, broken people are rarely get any attention both in life and on screen. So I realized I had the opportunity to write a love story, some sort of love story that would be without any cliches, hopefully, like not the typical love story that the audience don't see coming. And I just had this idea of a class reunion, and I started asking myself, why is he following her? Because that's all I knew at the beginning. And then I realized he can't remember, she can forget, and I thought, oh, I'll call it Memory.
Yeah. What I love is what you just said is that it's a love story that people don't see coming. It's also a love story that the characters don't see coming, because so often in films, I think things feel telegraphed, and we know that those characters feel like they're on a trajectory. This is one of these characters, it's new for them as well, right?
Well, the worst thing when I'm going to watch a movie is knowing from the, within the first 5-10 minutes exactly what's going to happen, and I think that's what's often the case. So I like that, if for whatever reason the audience, somebody walks out halfway into the film, she or he had no idea of what the movie was. I think, to make something cinematic, it has to also be, I'm not doing like close-ups and score and cornering the audience into this is what you have to feel and what you have to think. I rely heavily on the actors and on the audience.
Well, these characters definitely feel like people that we in New York could walk by every day not knowing what's going on in their lives and kind of get a sense of their emotional depths in a lot of ways. Jessica, what were your thoughts when you first read the script? What was your reaction to it?
I was blown away. I mean, it was completely absent of cliches and what one would imagine. And once I got to the park bench scene, I thought, oh, I know what this film is. It's a revenge drama in response to the Me Too movement, And it wasn't that. And then I was getting towards the end, and I thought, okay, now I know what it is. It's a thriller, and she's going to find out at the very end that he did do those things. And it's not that either. I mean, it never went kind of the obvious way. It was so elegant in the way that Michel writes, because it felt so authentic. These characters make irresponsible choices, and you still root for them. I mean, it's such a beautiful look into humanity and healing, and that's what I loved about it.
And in so many ways, Sylvia's, we have a sense of her from her small movements, her small reactions to things. She's so insular in a lot of ways, but her silence speaks volumes, her interior life speaks volumes in a lot of ways. What were some ways that you kind of found into the character, kind of just through those small gestures, those non-vocal moments, those scenes that kind of felt like they were just her living her life? What were some of the ways that you found that they were really specifically about Sylvia?
Different parts I prep in different ways. So like the eyes of Tammy Fay, I start from the outside and then work into the interior life. Sylvia was all about what was going on inside because she's so determined not to really show the world who she is. She's the one with the locks all over her body in some sense. And yet at the same time, she's incredibly sensitive because I believe it hurts when her skin is touched. There's like a fragility there. So I started with everything that would have had all the memories she's trying to forget. And that doesn't mean, I'm like at home, like doing sense memory or trying to like create these memories to be real. It literally just means me asking myself questions and answering them, and not in a way that feels fetishistic, I think, in terms of like an actor's process. So I would just ask myself questions of like, you know, what was her lowest day before she got sober? How was her daughter conceived? Does she know her daughter was conceived? What did her father smell like? What movie might have played in the room when they were together? Things like that. And then once I filled in that life for her, I never thought about it again, and I just played whatever was happening to her, and it physicalized in my body without me making the choices of it doing so.
Yeah. Peter, how about you? What were your thoughts when you first read the script?
That I really wanted to do it. I mean, I don't really get offered roles like this that often, maybe ever. And so it felt really exciting. You know, the writing, the fact that Jessica was doing it, my wife and I remember saw a very early screening of Tammy Fay, and we went up to her afterwards like geeked out fans, waiting for her to sign autographs, because she signs every autograph, and we're just kind of waiting there for her. And I was so full of admiration, you know, for somebody who she went so far out on the edge there. When you're playing a real life person like that people know, people who aren't actors don't realize this. It's like an impossible task. Frankly, when somebody said to me the other day, would you be interested in playing Nixon? And I was like, definitely not. No way, zero. So I really admired her craft and what she could do. And I knew of Michel some, and I educated myself more before our first meeting. And then for me, it was just a matter of like trying to get a job that I really wanted. I love the idea of playing a character who has dementia, but is very early on, right? Where it's more about what he can do versus what he can't. And even the notion of action being cumulative in a movie, that scene happened, that leads to this scene, now we've established this in terms of the relationship. That's one of the reasons why this relationship is unusual, is because, you know, I know who she is every time and all of that, but it doesn't accumulate in the same way. What is getting stronger and stronger between us is an intuitive thing. I don't go back and look at my book and go, oh, she's traumatized, I should treat her like someone who is traumatized when I go to make love to her. I can feel it because I've been around her. And I do think that that's one of the things that I saw in my uncle that really did not go away for a long time when he had dementia, was this sort of intuitive sense about somebody in the now, in the present moment. I see you, you know? So I wanted some of that in there.
Yeah. There's also one of the things I love about your performance is that Saul is sort of he's existing in the in-between spaces in life, and when we see him, he is enjoying each moment in a way. When you kind of give the high five to Elsie Fisher, and there's a sense of joy in each moment that it sort of feels like every moment is new for him in that
Well, I love a visitor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like when she comes, even it's like somebody coming through the front door that is not my brother.
Yeah. Right.
Is fantastic.
Yeah.
And maybe I know them, maybe I don't know them. It doesn't really matter, you know?
Yeah.
I loved that. I loved the way we played that I'm always coming down those steps to the door, you know?
Michel, I also love the way that the film sort of follows both characters at a natural pace. We're obviously with Sylvia for 15 minutes, and then once Saul comes in the picture, then the film sort of very naturally follows his story. It's a sort of really elegant way and very subtle way of sort of saying both these people have weight, both of them have stories that we want to follow, and a sense of naturalistic storytelling in a way, right? Talk to us about the split way you wanted to tell both sides of the love story.
Well, again, I guess changing the point of view can be a bit of a gamble for a more conventional movie, but I don't think on those terms. It just felt right to me. I mean, I imagine if I was looking at the movie, I like being with Jessica's character all the time at the beginning, and the film seems to be only about that, and then we start to understand who's Saul. And as in every movie, I have more material than what you see on screen, but I try to find the exact balance, hopefully, to, make it work. But again, not giving, like some people tell me, I was surprised to learn towards the end of the movie that it's his house and not just Charles' house. We save that for the end. We trust the audience, and we don't give away everything at once, because that would be less interesting.
Yeah. Jessica, another fascinating aspect of Sylvia that I think is really sort of says so much about her is the way she is with her daughter, who's played by Brooke Timber. And so there's so much love there, but there's also so much caution and so much wariness in a lot of ways. Talk to us about figuring out the mother-daughter dynamic in a lot of ways, not even necessarily between actors, but how character-wise it kind of told so much about Sylvia by the way she dealt with her daughter.
I've never been asked that question. I love this question. I believed that her daughter was the only reason she was alive. And the only reason, I could cry talking about it, the only reason she wanted to be alive. So, I'm always like this. It's so annoying. So the beautiful thing about working with Brooke, we never prepped like, oh, let's figure out how to play mother and daughter, and let's do these exercises to figure out how to connect to each other. Because I think Sylvia has a lot of difficulty doing what I'm doing now, is like being open in some sense. She's so closed off, and she's so protective, and she's fearful of everything. But really, her daughter is the only reason she exists. And I think that there's a fear of like what happens when that cord is cut. And Saul, in some sense, helps her find some joy in life separate from her daughter, which I think is an incredible thing for Sylvia to learn throughout the film.
Yeah. And in fact, that's a good segue, Peter, to talk about. There's the scene in the bathtub where Saul gets in with his clothes on. It sort of says, it felt to me like it was getting a glimpse of what this man used to be throughout his life, and then perhaps now even more so because of the dementia, or maybe despite of it. I don't know. It's just sort of a sense of living in the moment, and a sense of joyfulness and silliness as it came to it, or just, like I say, living in the moment. There's that sense of his bringing joy to Sylvia's life in a way that he wasn't even anticipating himself, right?
Yeah, you say, was it the dementia? To me, the dementia was like over here in the corner. The guy was center stage. And I really wanted to keep the dementia, the conflict. That's the obstacle that he has to get over to get what he wants in the movie. It is not who he is. And so that scene in the bathtub is one take. We only shot it once because I didn't dry my clothes off, we just realized. So that's the first and only take of that. And I think, I actually was just trying to remember if we knew I was going to go in or not. We did not know I was going to go in.
We didn't rehearse it at all.
Yeah, so that happened. And then when something like that happens, you're like, we can stop filming. I think that's how we decide when to stop filming, when something real that connects us, that is about the journey of these two people in the film. I keep saying my journey in the film is not unlike Pepe Le Pew's. I am just bouncing along behind her, ready to go whenever she wants me. I did feel like that. I felt so, it's interesting to be the pursuer, but be somebody who's cautious and sensitive about it. Every scene, I know exactly what I want. That scene on the log, I'm like, this is date number 1. This is going to be amazing. And then, So I had a really strong point of view through the story, and it made it very easy to play. The only part of the movie that was difficult to play for me was the beginning of the movie, because it's not from my point of view. I had to justify behavior that's in the script, which is he sees her at a reunion and follows her home and ends up outside in the morning afterwards. And he's meant to be threatening there. But we figured that out together. And honestly, Michel Never heard the end of it before we started because I just kept going. But this part at the beginning, who am I? So yeah, it was a joy to act this guy. I love him. Maybe I don't want to rank them, but if I were in a room with all the characters I've played, I would go for a walk with this guy and leave the rest of them behind.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Jessica, you've spoken about this. That's a scene on the bench when after she confronts him, and that there was sort of this sense of Sylvia is wanting something from him, and he throws her for a loop. He takes a left turn when she's not expecting it. Talk to us about that scene, how acting that scene kind of it took its own path in a lot of ways, right? Because it's really this great sort of she's determined to do something and find something out, and it doesn't go the way she's expecting, right?
That's the best. I mean, it's really the most beautiful thing about working with Michel is because every scene is one angle. The actors are sharing the screen together, which means you can surprise each other. We don't. We usually shoot the rehearsal. We don't rehearse. So you show up really, not knowing what the other's going to do. And Peter and I never talked about a scene really that intently before we shot it.
We never spoke at all.
We never spoke. We kept it on the camera. And for Sylvia, I really felt like, even the way it was written, she's baiting him with all these questions. It was like a cat playing with a mouse, What do you remember? Do you remember, oh, you went to that school? I went to that school. Do you know what I mean? She's kind of leading him to the massacre in her mind, what she thinks she's going to get. And I feel like she's showing up for that scene. Like, now's my moment. After all these years, I'm finally going to get some kind of acknowledgement, and I'm going to defeat someone. I'm tired of being a victim. I am now going to hurt someone. And playing the scene with Peter, it's written. We played it just as it was written. But he delivered everything so sweet and open, and it was never this attitude of, you're wrong. It was just like confused, and I'm saying, I don't remember that. And I remember it just disarming me and feeling so frustrated. And then I felt again defeated in an amazing way, I think, for Sylvia, to leave him and then come back. It's the beautiful thing of working with an actor like Peter, where you really never know where it's going to go, and also with a filmmaker who trusts that he wants the actors to take it to a place that he never also perhaps imagined it could go.
Yeah.
It's funny, that scene on the log, Michel showed me an early cut of the movie, and I actually was watching it with my wife. We were sitting there watching it, and she was like, all you need is the scene on the log. That scene on the log's amazing. One of the reasons is because he's just trusted his actors so much. I mean, you don't understand if you don't do it all the time. People give themselves outs. They shoot coverage so they can cut the scene down, and he just leaves it so open. And yeah, I'm sure it was different than what you wrote, and than what you imagined when you wrote it.
Yeah, it's never. I try to divorce myself from what I imagine. I try to know what I need in terms of emotionally and cinematically, but that doesn't mean there are 10 ways to reach that, and they will show me those ways.
I always joke, because I've worked with Michel twice now, that I'm protecting the screenwriter from the director. Because he writes something incredible, but then we show up on set and as the director, he's like, I don't like it, let's do something else. And you're like, wait, no, let's do both.
Michel, the screenwriter, needs to have that protection. Right. Well, let's ask Michel, the director, though, in terms of the style. Over many films now, this has been something you've developed. It's so effective, it's so humane. It really gives the actors room to breathe and inhabit their characters. Talk to us about the origins of your style and what you saw it as early on and what it's become.
Well, I think it has to do with less is more, and with trusting the audience, and with having a reason as a director to. I will move the camera. I will use score. I will use any trick or resource if there's a good reason to do it, but not just for the sake of it. When we cut to Peter's face on the scene where she apologizes, there's a reason to cut to Peter's face. But otherwise, I've seen colleagues that just shoot everything from every angle and then let the editor work on it. Might as well not make a movie, man. I mean, yeah, yeah.
You were saying before it came out on stage that that editing does force people to kind of have the emotion or have a specific, it guides them in a specific way. Whereas your beautiful camera setups and letting these actors do what they do allows them to find the story, allows the actors to find the story. It's a way of letting everyone's intelligence come to the fore in a lot of ways, right?
And yes, hopefully, and it should be alive too. And I trust them, again, a big deal. For example, the bathtub scene was supposed to be a bed scene. And then we were having conversations and we said, that sounds lame. Another bed scene. And we came up with the bathtub scene over the phone. So I tell my crew, that scene turns into a bathtub scene. They're used to it. Yeah. They have to trust me equally. And then Peter ends up inside the tub and I'm like, is that funny? Is that cute? Is that natural? Is that real? And it's the only take, because I go to the editor. We're shooting in chronological order. We put it where it belongs. And if it feels real, why will I shoot another option where he's not falling? I don't need options. If it's good and real, and they know that. So every time we're shooting another scene, the stakes are high because we'll do it only once if it works. Yeah. And Jessica and I shot another movie 3 months ago. I'm trying to make a movie every year. It's a game, a serious game if you want, but it should be a game. A movie shouldn't be a dead thing that you're just going every day to work to shoot what's on the page and protecting yourself from I don't know what. It should be alive. Yeah.
I love that scene, that it was only one take and that it was spontaneous, and it becomes one of the most memorable scenes of the year, in my opinion. Peter, let's talk about the physicality of Saul, because I know that there are aspects to it that he's moving kind of slow. There's aspects to him that we're probably
he's on a fair amount of medication. Which
right.
is important to remember.
But there's aspects to him that maybe were obviously had a real life backstory to it, and but ended up working for the character, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth about every part that I play. People would be like, "Oh, you got skinny for that role," and I'd be like, "I happen to be skinny." Well, I happen to be heavier for this movie, and I had herniated a disc like probably almost a year before we started this movie, and when he and I met, I was like in the very beginning of trying to do physical therapy. I decided not to get surgery, and in my mind, like I tell my wife before every role, I needed to like lose weight and have a mustache. Like that's the beginning of every part for me, and then I decide not to do either of those things. But that's where I start with every character. And I was starting there with this guy, and Michel was just like, "No, man, I like you the way you are." And so then I started to experiment with the way I walked. I mean, this leg wouldn't go as far forward as this leg because it's L5 down there. So I did have a gait that was uneven, which is interesting, and I leaned on it, so to speak, and embraced it. And I actually, leading up to the film, I decided to go for broke and was just like, I'm just going to eat whatever I want and drink as much as I want. I have dementia. I can do whatever I want.
By the way, I did say backstory, not thinking of that it, of course, was a story about your back. Jessica, I'd like to talk about the amazing scene where Sylvia sees her mother with her family all around her, and everyone's there. And by the way, this is a call out to the amazing cast that's in this film as well. Can we have a round of applause, please, for Jessica Harper, Merritt Weaver, Josh Charles, Elsie Fisher, and Brooke Timber. An extraordinary ensemble around all of you. That scene is so beautiful and shot in such a phenomenal way, but it is also watching the emotions and watching them swirl around all of those family members. It's an extraordinary scene in so many ways. Let's kind of talk about the emotions of it, I guess, to start off with, and then we'll go to the amazing technical aspect of it.
Well, Michel works in a way where authenticity is the most important thing to him. And I realized that on day one. I showed up, it's an actual AA meeting. and that which I wasn't expecting. So very clearly on day one, I'm like, okay, I can't look like an actor in this movie. Sylvia has to be a real human being to me. And that scene, I mean, he just trusts the actors. Before we started shooting, of course we didn't rehearse it, he said to me, he comes up to me to kind of figure out where to start with the camera. He said, how far into the room do you think you'll get? And I said, as soon as I see my mother or hear her, I would stop.
Then I say, oops, that's complicated.
Yeah, I mean,
but complicated means interesting too.
Yeah, we're right like by the front door, and then we just played it, and because we don't have continuity and we're not doing like a lot of coverage, that every take the camera would move, or he'd come in and like say, let's lose this section of the scene, or let's add this line. And I noticed, and this is also as he's shooting, he's editing, because if it's one angle, he's trying to lead the audience where to look. And I noticed the camera kept sliding a little bit until it was almost behind Jessica Harper, who plays my mother. And she kept hiding me from the camera, because as she was approaching me, she kept blocking me, erasing Sylvia from the scene over and over again. I mean, it's really subtle. And then at one point, Merritt is kind of the only one that you see, because you see Saul and Sylvia together as a unit, and then, the mother's back, and then Merritt is kind of in the center of it. And it's like an accident, but it's not, because he's leading it. And that's also a beautiful thing that a director can do, where maybe you're not even aware of it, that you do it yourself. Maybe it's like you're not even conscious of it, but he directs us without us realizing that we're being directed. He creates an environment for real things to happen. And the end of the scene that's in the movie where I yell at her to get the fuck away from me, that wasn't in the script, but she needed to get the fuck away from me. Because, I mean, she's amazing in that scene, I think. Horrific and amazing.
And again, that's a good example of we cut to her face as she approaches Sylvia, because it has to be like that. Yeah.
In fact, it's the kind of scene that you watch in a film and you realize that so often in life, a tableau like that of a family in crisis or a confrontation or something is exactly how people are. People are centered around a conversation, a moment, a confrontation, and that scene captures that kind of thing so harrowingly and beautifully. Peter, let's talk about where Saul is in that scene, because as Jessica said, he's behind her, they're a unit, and yet he is also kind of looking at it as he's just walked into a family drama that he kind of wasn't aware was going on, but he is still absolutely with Sylvia 100%, right?
Yeah, I just wanted her to know I was on her team no matter what. Yeah. I didn't care if she was an axe murderer. Yeah. Honestly, this is my team. Yeah. Everyone else is not. So I just wanted her to feel, without being even a part of this scene, that I was behind her, that I was there. I have no idea if you knew I was behind her.
Then Jessica Harper pulls you into the scene. You know that
I don't bite. It's fine.
There's that dialogue, no? That she's a sick woman. Yeah. Or families, man.
Yeah, families. And was that scene? I mean, had you conceived of that like that while you were writing it, Michel? Was there an aspect to it that sort of developed over time as you were shooting? What was it like? Kind of was that composition of the scene, was that whole tableau of it, was the family confrontation early on conceived like that?
About the actual composition that should I mean, that's the scene that I was most nervous about throughout the whole shooting, because it's a key scene in the movie, and it starts in a way, and everything's contained in that scene, and the bench scene, the log. I think those are the two key scenes. No, I was very nervous that day, very nervous. But then I turn and I look at every actor's face, and they're all looking at me like saying, "Relax, we're here for you." Instead of actors looking at me like, "Do you know what you're doing?" And it's never the case. The actors are, good to me. So they make my life easy. And little by little, we found that And we did shoot other angles in that case because I was nervous. But as soon as we shot this, that must be take number 2 or 3, we all look at each other like, we got it. We know we got it. Yeah.
Jessica, Peter, you guys are also acclaimed stage actors as well. Working with Michel and his style, it must be a beautiful combination, right, of indie film dynamics and stage dynamics, right? I would imagine. Jessica?
Yeah, I mean, you do your own hair and makeup, you pull together your own costumes. I mean, that's the whole thing with theater and drama class. I remember, bringing in costumes for scene work, and I was just on Broadway doing my own hair and makeup every day. So I love all that stuff. I don't need to be separated in terms of I don't need other people to get me ready. If Sylvia can get herself ready, I can get myself ready. And it's beautiful to work in an ensemble in that way, where when so many people are sharing one angle of a scene, we're all holding each other. Like even the scene we were just talking about, there's a lot of people in there, and no one is really pulling for focus. You don't have an actor going, I'm going to move at a certain point, so the audience eye directs. Everyone is just holding the story and the moment, in generosity.
And I'm in the room. I'm not on a different room watching TV, monitors. Right. I'm next to the camera looking at the actors.
Yeah. No video village, right?
I mean, the other thing about being a stage actor, right, is if the camera is over there pointed this way, and there's not going to be any coverage. Right. It's like there's a proscenium. And you have to, I had to remind myself that I didn't have to worry about turning out. Because quite naturally, if we know that's the only angle, we all have our little thing in our head where you're like, you open up. Right. And he doesn't want that. Case in point, like me, the scene where I get decapitated by the camera. And then when I sit down, I sit with my back to the camera. And I loved that. I loved that he would have an audience do this. There's that famous Ruth Gordon shot in Rosemary's Baby where everyone just goes like this in the theater. Yeah, right. I love that stuff. That's the reason to watch a movie in the movie theater, is to do that with everybody.
Yeah. We have a question from the audience here that asks, were there any particular scenes that resonated the most, and why? Jessica, we can start with you on that. Were there any particular scenes that resonated the most?
The one that surprised me that I never really, I was worried about, but I never really thought about it, or I tried not to, was the scene where they're first intimate. And we shot the rehearsal, and we only shot one take. So that's it. That rehearsal is what's in the movie. And, we kind of had an idea of what would you do when you came? Okay, we come in and take the shoes off, because I really felt, well, Sylvia would stall as much as she could. It's like trying to get up the courage at all of these things. And I love just how it unfolded in the blocking and the journey of it, of her trying so hard to be normal, and the obstacle of what her skin, all of these things. I found it in working with Peter, and the trust that Michel had, and that as soon as we did it once, he was like, let me go watch it in the cut, and I think we have it. So that one was important.
I just told him the camera can go from the front door, because they're coming from the street, to the bed. Let's see what happens. Right. And it was great.
Yeah. And Peter, we were talking earlier today in terms of that scene. It's not the classic Hollywood thing of let's quickly cut to a shirt on the floor or something like that. It's in real time. You're seeing, right.
So many directors I've worked with, when you do a love-making scene, they're like, the problem is getting the clothes off. And I'm like, the problem is getting the clothes off. Isn't getting the clothes off the good part? It's as if they're just wanting to get to the side angle shot of the skin going down like that and all that. They consider that the meat of the scene. And of course, you look at a movie like Don't Look Now. Don't Look Now. I always say,
no, that's yes. Don't Look Now. Yeah, Don't Look Back is the Dylan. Don't Look Now is the Nick Rowe. Correct?
Yeah, where he's cutting with them getting dressed and them making love and all of that, and you go clothing is part of the game. Yeah. So I loved that a lot of that scene is not lovemaking. It's she wants to put on her shoes, and I'm sitting next to her while she's putting on her shoes or taking off her shoes, and I just like that he's interested in all of that interstitial stuff, which is life,
Yeah. Well, how about you in terms of the scene that resonated, Peter, was there a scene that resonated the most for you, and why?
I just loved I loved acting in this movie. I relished every bit of it. The scene that I was worried about was the one where it said in the script, she's watching TV, starts crying, he's sleeping, he wakes up, he starts crying. I was like, what are you talking about? What is this? Like, and he didn't like say, well, this is what I think's happening, this is what it means. No, he just said, well, it's what the writer wrote, you know? And I love the way we figured that out. Like, I can't really imagine doing that with anyone else other than Jessica. Like, it's just such a pleasure to act with her. I mean, especially stuff, yeah. Whatever. Now we're friends. When we were filming, we were like, you know.
We were friends. We just were
Friends that
not
didn't
talking.
speak. Yeah.
We were mute friends.
We were mute friends. No, it is true, really true, that I felt like I had total trust and faith in Jessica. I felt like we trusted each other and we just never broke it. It was almost like we gave it to each other from the beginning, and it just lasted the whole film.
And you
which was
communicated through me if needed, when needed. Sometimes I would say, I just talked to Peter, and not passing a message, but I would be the bridge of communication, which made it interesting.
Yeah, we saved all of it for the camera. I think 98% of the talking we did on set was scripted.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's it. And that actually kind of goes into this question too, which is that, was it hard to leave these characters after you wrapped? And I'm both reminded of you saying that you would want to take a walk and talk with Saul out of all the characters that you've played, and also the two of you saying that you're friends, now, and it was 98% of it was scripted. Was it hard to leave these characters though after shooting was done? Jessica?
I mean, Michel talks to me. I wasn't even aware of this. We finished shooting, and I was wrapped, and it was the middle of the night. We're in the subway, and I was like, okay, let me take off this jacket. And there was like a freedom, and there was a release in that, and I wasn't even aware of that energetic.
When I said that's a wrap, it was like breaking a spell. Her face changed, like really an exorcism or something.
Yeah.
Your face changed. Like suddenly I saw Jessica again. I had forgotten there was Jessica there, It was Sylvia every day.
Yeah, the heaviness of who she was. But also, and I'm reminded again today, I guess sometimes it never really leaves you. Like if I'm talking about how much Sylvia loves her daughter and like the threat of losing her or whatever, I can get surprised because I feel it as though it's real and Sylvia's a real person. Yeah. So there is some sense, depending on how strongly something grows inside of you, you don't really, it's always there.
Yeah. Peter, how about you?
I don't think you ever let them go. I think it's a cumulative process. Yeah. And one of the great things about being an actor is you learn so much about yourself by playing other people, because they're all you. Yeah. And yeah, I would say I don't think I'm very aware of what I take with each character. And I don't think I'm very aware of, like, if I come home from work and I've got some residual something from the movie. Yeah. The people around me have said otherwise. But he was fun. I felt, for a guy who was dying of dementia, I felt great. Yeah. I really did, because I had a purpose. Before the movie starts, I mean, the character that is not in the movie, that was the big character for me, which is my wife, right? And like, when she would come into my mind, it would be like that, just a big, fat feeling of love. And so I knew this guy was just capable of so much tenderness, so much love. He had lived it before I could feel it in him. And I was hoping she would bite, She nibbled. She nibbled. She nibbled, and it was all good enough. It was fine. But I think when the movie ended, I still wanted more, I think that was the main feeling.
Yeah. Well, to wrap up, I want to ask each of you what you hope audiences take away from this film, because there's so much here and so much emotion and so much humanity. Michel, what would you hope audiences take away from the film?
Well, I guess what I was saying at first, the broken people, you know, and it's not just them, their characters, but the AA meeting. It's all people that have been working hard to heal and to stay on that program, and the working place where Sylvia is every day at is, you know, she's making a difference. And yeah, to be kind to each other or something like that, which I guess sounds strange coming from me. But yeah.
Yeah. Peter, how about you?
Take away from the film just an experience of humanity. I mean, I think it's pretty unusual to go to the movies and see characters that feel familiar. And I think we live in very difficult, tragic times. And it's nice to be reminded of other parts of human nature other than brutality.
Yeah, absolutely. Jessica, how about you?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I second all of those things. It would probably also be, I feel like I've seen someone like Sylvia on the subway or walking down the street, someone like Saul in New York City, and this idea of, you know, what a person might be holding, what they might be contending with every day, and perhaps it's just a reminder to allow more humanity in, maybe a smile or, you know, something that might bridge the gap between us all.
Just Connect, the E.M. Forster line, which I always love. Just Connect, yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank this audience for joining us here. Thank you all so much, and to keep the conversation going. Oh, wait.
There are some actors, some other actors of the movie sitting there. So thank you very much. Raise your hands or stand up or something. Don't be shy.
Yeah.
There you are,
there
guys.
We are. Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all so much. Keep this conversation going about this phenomenal film. It opens December 22nd. Let people know. The film is called Memory. Ladies and gentlemen, Michel Franco, Jessica Chastain, and Peter Sarsgaard. The film is Memory. Thank you.